This is the Federal Mobility Policy Update with Beth Osborne from Transportation for America, Martha Roskowski from the Mobility and Access Collaborative, and Darryl Young from the Summit Foundation. This week, we'll review the most recent developments in Congress on the reauthorization of the Federal Surface Transportation Act, a 5-year spending plan for highways and transit. Is this the year where transit gets its fair share? Then we'll look at the most recent efforts to turn the Biden American Jobs Plan, also known as the Infrastructure Plan, into a reality. Will Congress and the administration settle on language, or will the ideas languish? And with both of these efforts, what is the role of an inside-outside effort to advocate for walking, biking, and transit? All that and more on this week's episode. Welcome to another episode of the Federal Mobility Policy Update. We've got so much to update you on since we've last been with you. In particular, we want to focus on two measures. One, reauthorization of the Surface Transportation Act, and two, the American Jobs Plan, which is basically the Biden infrastructure plan. With us today, we've got Beth Osborne from Transportation for America. Hi, Beth.
Hello.
And we have my colleague, Martha Roskowski from the Mobility Collaborative, or the Mobility and Access Funders Collaborative. Hi, Martha. So I'm jealous. Both of them are not in their offices. They're clearly other places. But today, we're going to focus on what's been happening in D.C. Let's start by looking at the Reauthorization Act. Every 5 years, in theory, the Surface Transportation Act provides funding formulas for roads and for transit. And as you know, the traditional split has been 80% for roads, 20% for transit. We're trying to change that. What's happening? And the deadline, I believe, is what? Is it in September? Is when
September
the deadline?
30th.
Right. So what's going on the Hill? How is conversations playing out, and how are those conversations being reflected in the White House?
Yeah, the House has been working on their draft bill, which is going to be very much based on the bill they passed last summer with some improvements. They got a lot of comments. There were tweaks, but I think it looks substantially like what they passed last year. They've also included a lot of earmarks. They had an opportunity for all members to submit earmark requests. It sounds like they were overwhelmingly highway requests because that's what's in the pipeline, because that's what we fund. And the Senate is also drafting a bill. The dynamics they could have gone in a lot of directions. Chairman Barrasso was leading the committee when the Republicans were in charge, and the baton has been handed to Senator Carper, my old boss. And he's working with the new ranking member, Shelley Moore Capito, on a bipartisan bill. It looks like the House will mark up in the first full week of June, so the week of June 7th. And the Senate claims the bill will be out before Memorial Day. I think that's ambitious, possible, but quite ambitious, more likely afterward as well. And we'll see where we are at that point.
Great. So go ahead, Martha.
How are you feeling about the bills? It seemed like the word on the street was that the House bill was pretty good. People thought there was some good stuff in there. Did not address the 80-20 split. Not a reform bill, but incremental improvement over where we've been. What's the Senate side looking like? What are you hearing?
Well, I'll say on the House, they made some major changes to some of the rules on the way highways are built. A fix-it-first strategy that was very strong, a lot of language in there to improve safety outcomes. They created a multimodal access to jobs and essential services measure that will be something every DOT and metropolitan planning organization will have to use. There's a lot of really great things in there. What they didn't do was mess with the 80-20 split, and they didn't talk about transit operating, which is something we really only started talking about since they passed that bill. So there are things to do there, but there's some really exciting things in the House bill. The Senate, our hope is that Senator Carper, along with the Democratic leadership, and Senator Carper invited all of the Democrats to send their requests for this bill to them, and I know that many of them included some of the same things that the House did, included requests for some big time change. The hope was that he would write a bill that reflected those things and negotiate from there in seeking bipartisan support. My fear is that he started from Senator Barrasso's bill and negotiated from there. That I hope that's not true, because that's a terrible place to start. It means that you're negotiating backward from the bill you had before. And it wasn't a good bill. It got a lot of praise that I thought was, it was inaccurate, it was unwarranted, and it was dangerous. And I think the danger is that people think a bad bill is good, but they said the word climate out loud and put a tiny bit of money to it. And they got a lot of praise from the environmental community when the overwhelming majority of the bill would have done damage to the environment and climate. So not clear what's going on in the Senate, but there's definitely room to be concerned.
Now, I've also heard that the Republicans are floating their own proposal around that, or
yeah,
want to go into that?
The House Republicans announced that they would release their own bill at $400 billion, which is more than current spending, but less than the Democratic proposal. I think we'll probably see their bill in the coming weeks. They may want to wait until after Chairman DeFazio releases his bill.
So if this isn't the first time we've been this way, where people are looking for language, is there anything we ought to know about possible mistakes? I guess this is the window where the public should be making their statements.
Yeah. In fact, we were talking internally about this and making statements about, what our bottom line is and what we expect to see in both bills. My organization has spoken very positively about the leadership that Chairman DeFazio showed last Congress. It was really some of the best leadership we have seen since Chairman Oberstar back, 15 years ago, put out a real reform bill. And we were also thinking it was time to remind everybody what we thought of the Senate bill last Congress, and we thought very poorly of it.
Mm-hmm. Martha, do you have other questions regarding the House bill? Or we'll then turn to the American Jobs Plan, if not.
Well, just quickly, next steps. Bills come out. They get voted on in both the House and the Senate, and then they go, this is like, basic constitutional process, but the House will pass the version.
Yeah.
I was going to start singing, but I didn't have the chutzpah. So the House passes a bill, Senate passes a bill, and then they get negotiated.
Yeah, the Senate's a little complicated because there's so many committees that have jurisdiction over transportation. So generally what happens is Environment and Public Works writes up the highway title. Then they get an agreement to go to the floor, the Senate floor. Once they get that agreement, the Banking Committee quickly rushes forward transit title, and the Commerce Committee quickly rushes forward a rail and safety title. And then the Finance Committee puts together the funding package, which happens absolutely at the end. And it gets all wrapped up together and sent to the floor. In the House, it's a little bit simpler. It's overwhelmingly transportation infrastructure. So once they're done, they work out the funding with Ways and Means, goes to the House floor. They both pass a bill. They then negotiate together to find something they agree to. And when they do that, it goes back for approval to both houses, and then it goes to the president.
And if you can cite that from watching this audience, we will send you a prize. It's Byzantine, and it requires that we all have to focus more on this issue. Let's turn now. Are you okay, Martha, if we turn to the next subject?
I am. I want to circle back to how our community is mobilizing to talk to our members of Congress. But that applies to both reauthorization and the American Jobs Plan. So let's dive into our next topic. Okay, so the American Jobs Plan, which was, many people know it as the Biden Infrastructure Plan, is moving its way or not moving its way through the process. How is Congress taking this in, shaping it, forming it? How is the White House providing guidance, if any?
why don't you tell us about that, and we'll talk about the implications of what you tell us.
Yeah, it's it was 25 pages of broad ideas covering multiple agencies in multiple departments, tons of programs under multiple agencies and multiple departments. So every paragraph had, one or two major programs it proposed.
Yeah. A bunch of really neat stuff, exciting stuff in there.
Really exciting stuff. But, it's not an easy thing to take a general idea and turn it into legislative language. We've all run into this where someone has a great idea, and then when you get into implementation, it raises a ton of questions that really need to be worked through and thought through to make it work. I've been working on some text for a transit operating program. And as soon as you start writing, you come up with a ton of questions. You think you answer them. And as you're writing, you come up with more questions. And then other people see it and they have more questions. They've got to do that for every idea in that proposal. And that's an overwhelming request. Especially, I fear, for the folks at the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and Environment and Public Works in the Senate and banking. They're already having to write the reauthorization bill, and that is a big task. So if we want to see those new programs move forward, someone has to help. And it would be great if the administration participated in putting some of their ideas in a legislative language. But so far, I'm not hearing about that occurring. And that's a mistake that the Obama administration made when I was there. And it resulted in the Obama administration putting out some good conceptual ideas that went nowhere. And it wasn't necessarily because the Hill wasn't interested. It's just because a committee with 20 staff can only do so many things before they're overwhelmed. And if an administration made up of, hundreds of thousands of people can't pitch in.
Is it a function of having the white, because I remember in an earlier episode, you had said that a lot of these ideas came from within DOT and other agencies. Is it a function of asking those agencies now to fill out or to write the language that explains how this would happen as a matter of law?
Yes, but they have to have leave from the White House to do that. So if at any point an agency is not putting out a proposal, it's not their decision.
I see.
They have to get clearance. Now, if you want to write a bill on, if there's a member of Congress who says, I have this idea for a bill, and they sketch it out, they can send it to the administration and say, help me make this work. But you've got to put a good amount of thought and work into it to get that technical assistance. If the administration is going to put out a proposal, they have to write something up and they have to clear it through the administration and get leave from the White House to actually put it out. And that is work too. But again, if that's too much for the administration, it's hard to believe that, the much smaller team in the various committees can do it all on their own.
So Beth, it sounds like when you worked in the Obama administration, the White House did not give direction to go ahead and, flesh out those program ideas. And now the Biden administration is perhaps doing the same thing. Why? I mean, if these are programs that they care about, that they've envisioned, that they're excited about, why would they not detail some of their 50,000 employees? I don't know how many people work for the administration, but it's a lot, to actually think that through and write it down. Do you know what's the hesitation there? DOT is 55,000 employees alone, and it's not the biggest agency. So there are a lot of federal employees out there. There's a lot of people. Yeah.
A lot of people.
A lot of smart people.
Yes. Though a lot of those are air traffic controllers who aren't going to be writing legislation, in fairness.
Land planes.
That's right. To keep them focused on their job. But there's a lot of different reasons why you might not get involved. One is you wanted to put out the idea, but that was not where you're going to put your energy. I don't think that's what's at play here. Two is it's early in your administration, you're just staffing up, and it's hard to make that commitment, even if you should. Third might be that your focus is being swallowed up elsewhere. I can tell you that when we wrote up at USDOT, when I was there, our reauthorization proposal, and we went through the entire clearance process, which took months and was a huge undertaking, not even to mention the writing, which is a huge undertaking. The White House didn't want us to release the proposal because they were in the midst of a debate about a debt ceiling, having to raise the debt ceiling. And their feeling was that if they released a bill with a lot of spending, it would make it harder for them to convince Congress to raise the debt ceiling. Never mind that they'd already put out a budget with all the money in it. That was out there. This was just how we would spend it, but they killed it, and they really angered Capitol Hill, because Capitol Hill could have used their language. You know, they would have loved to start writing from the DOT's proposal. Fact of the matter is, that's how you can win a lot of your battles, is just for your document to be the starting point. And we were missing in action, and we got rolled.
So
she who sets the agenda wields great power.
Yeah. So I'm trying to fathom this and reconcile this inconsistency. We have a Secretary of Transportation, Department of Transportation, who is out there and being the bully pulpit, the face of infrastructure, if you will, and staff that are supporting him and trying to rally support for the package. And at the same time, there doesn't seem to be the other hand being engaged in all of this. Is it a function of not having gone this way? Are there people around the Secretary and the White House who, some of them are former Obama people? Is it because there's so many ongoing series of crises and staffing up, they just can't get to that right now?
Well, I will say that when you're at USDOT, it's amazing how many things distract you from your agenda when you walked in the morning. When I was there, now Deputy Secretary Polly Trottenberg would, at our weekly meetings, ask us to look at our calendars and determine whether or not we could see our priorities in the calendar, and if not, rearrange the calendar. But right. It's really hard to do. And I know when you're the secretary and the deputy secretary, you spend a huge amount of time dealing with various crises and issues at FAA that have nothing to do with the surface transportation proposal. So it can be very easy to fall on your heels, get on your back heels and try to just manage incoming rather than pushing something out. But, if they got direction that would be helpful and would get the American Jobs Plan proposals moving, they would make it happen. And I really think even if USDOT decided they wanted to do it, if they don't have not just the okay, but full-throated support from the White House, who would then have to really push it out, there's only so far they can go. And I don't think that's happened yet.
Meanwhile, they have daily crisis like I-40, which is a major thoroughfare across the Mississippi between Kentucky and Tennessee, being completely stopped because of major fractures in the bridge. So you're having to deal with the public relations and the crisis around that, which is an argument for why we need more staff working on language that will prevent problems like that continuing. Martha, you brought up a good issue around the advocacy for all of this. Do you want to unpack some of that?
Yeah, let's dive into that as our final topic on our check-in with Beth. It's always fun. So, I worked as a lobbyist trying to advance biking and walking on the reauthorization when we developed Safety Lou way back when, and when my friend Beth was working on the Hill for Senator Carper's office. So that's where we first met. And at that time, we had this big network of people working on reauthorization. The bike people and the safety people and the scenic byways and the environmental groups and, a pretty big coalition. There was another big effort around, early in the Obama administration. This time it's a thinner coalition. There's less philanthropic investment in it. I will say we've got a scrappy and really effective bunch of people on the ground working. We have a good transit network. We have the Charge Coalition. We have the bike folks. We have the Vision Zero folks. NACTO, the Association of Cities is in there pushing for, being better transportation decisions. Beth, from your viewpoint, can you give us sort of an overview of where we're at in terms of mobilization? And then let's talk a little bit about where are their needs, where are their opportunities?
Yeah, I feel like we have been, moving forward in a very positive way. One, we do have a scrappy crew that's able to punch way above their weight. And I think sometimes it leads folks to believe they're better funded than they are. No, they're just magic. And we shouldn't rely on magic. But two, we've attracted more funding. New funders have come into this space and really started paying attention in a way that I haven't seen in 10 years. And that's really exciting. And the first step in is to give a little bit of money for a few months or for a project. And that's very helpful, especially for organizations that, were teetering on whether or not they could keep their staff. But it's not enough to go hire a whole new body, a whole new talented person who can expand your capacity, can help you be in more places, working on more issues at one time. And that's the next step we need. And frankly, we need it very, very quickly. You need those people in place, ready, ensconced, with the contacts in the right places when things happen. Well, things are going to be happening. I don't want people to take that as an excuse to say, oh, we already missed the window. We don't know how quickly things will move. And just because one committee moves something forward doesn't mean all opportunity is gone. It just means every passing day is opportunity lost. And the more we can help these various groups hire additional people, the stronger we'll be when the moment to impact a decision comes along.
Yeah, I was just talking with Leah Shaham from the Vision Zero Network, and they're very locally focused. I mean, so much of our power in this equation comes from local groups, from local communities, cities, people on the ground who can raise their voices. And, Families for Safe Streets is a group of advocates, families of victims of traffic violence, like passionate, incredible stories to tell, ready to move and speak up. They're waiting. They're like, tell us what to say. So we have these gaps. We have great folks on the ground. We have super smart policy people like Beth. We have these gaps of communicators, both to tell our stories better and to let everybody know on the ground what to do.
To write up the fact sheets and write the op-eds. And there's so many great ideas that come in. And a lot of times we think, put it on the list, maybe one day. But we just don't have the team to take that great idea and turn it into reality because we're all at capacity.
So last year, we helped philanthropy, small parts of philanthropy, help to stand up organizations and keep the lights on, given the financial crisis that many institutions are facing. And it feels like that there was success.
Oh, yes.
We got $69 billion for transit, including transit operations.
Now we've never done at the federal level before.
Exactly. Now we find ourselves in year 2, and beyond keeping the lights on, we need to fill bodies. We need to force multiply to keep the momentum going. And it's not clear that philanthropy completely gets that the window is the remainder of this year. It's easy to say the next 3 weeks. It is the next 3 weeks, but it's the 3 weeks after that and the 3 weeks after that. We cannot get to where we need to go on mobility if we don't invest in the people who have the knowledge and the wherewithal to be more than scrappy.
Well, and I will say, for the past 10 years, I've heard things like Congress never does anything. Well, Congress has passed 2 reauthorization bills over that period of time, and philanthropy has been nowhere on the issue. Congress is actually doing things, and the administration's doing things all the time. Even once we pass a bill, there will be a million opportunities to influence how it's implemented through regulation and guidance, and how it's implemented at the state level as the money it goes out, or at the transit level. There are so many opportunities to play a part, but what seems to happen is people say, no one ever does anything, and when they do, it's no good because we weren't there and we weren't funded, and that then it becomes the excuse to not be there again. And it's very unfortunate. With a small and scrappy but super creative crew, we have transformed this debate over the last 2 years. We brought up issues that people told us we were crazy to speak out loud. And now they're either in the bill or they're legitimate parts of the conversation. Imagine if we were twice as big.
That's right. That's right. And at a time when philanthropy is talking about equity, it's talking about climate, it's talking about healthcare, the one thing that ties all of it together is mobility, whether it be biking, walking, transit, or electric vehicles, or micromobility. And yet, so much of philanthropy is not spending enough money on mobility in general. And we need certainly more. And that's my advertisement for participating in the Mobility Fund, which is part of that process. We'll put the link to the Mobility Fund in the show notes. I think we've reached, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, we set up the Mobility Fund to be a place where we can take in money from philanthropy and then quickly send it out to places that need it, to really strategic areas like Beth's talking about. So it's like we have a lot of the pieces in place. We know what we need to do. And as you said, Darryl, it's a force multiplier. There's a real opportunity. And I think, a lot of attention shifted to local work, city level work, which is fabulous. That's our base. That is our power long term. But you need to keep the federal piece in play as well and do the quieter stuff when that's needed, and then be able to ramp up on this sort of episodic thing that we need to do with the federal funding.
And Martha, I'd love it if we could just close by citing a recent success, which both you and I have been so involved with. One of those geeky issues that I've been told for years you'd never be able to get people to understand or engage on, a manual that dictates how we design traffic control devices, from the way we stripe our streets to the way we design our stop signs and the way we control traffic lights and so much more. And we kind of proved them wrong last week. 24,000
comments got sent in about this sort of arcane book called the MUTCD, that people across the country working on this realize sometimes the devil's in the details. So I want to give kudos to America Walks, T4A, NACTO. A lot of folks raised the issue and just, I think, did brilliant work. So Beth, what's your crystal ball telling you? Will it make a difference?
It will definitely make a difference. It's going to create pressure to take these comments seriously. And I think the big question before USDOT right now is, are they going to go through this line by line and try to fix all of the points of contention, or and then get to work on rewriting it? Or are they going to try to rewrite it altogether? There are arguments for both. But frankly, I'm starting to hear such good things about the overall design manual known as the Green Book, moving away from design specifications into a performance-based approach. The MUTCD, as currently written, is really based in that old version of here's the standard as opposed to here's the result we're looking for. So it's going to be out of date almost as soon as it gets out there if they stay with this approach.
What if we look for results of fewer people dying on our road, less greenhouse gases, more equitable communities? Wouldn't it be great if those were the outcomes? Okay, so in a future version of this, we're going to come back and talk about performance measures. It's another wonky topic, but it's so exciting.
I think the most amazing thing of all of this is that 24,000 people responded. It got to the point where it put fear into the hearts of the status quo developers and designers. And that anytime you can do that, that's a disruptive force. And so we've already won by having that many people in a uniform and informed way submit comments. That's good. And I agree, we need to change the way we measure what we do and look at performance standards. And that will be the topic of a future show. I want to thank Beth and Martha for being on this week's show. If you like this show, like it, punch the like button and subscribe. We'll be speaking to you soon with more developments on federal mobility policy. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye.